It's hard for me to wrap my head around this, but are you all really planning on coming to this event? I'm honestly surprised you're even considering it. Nancy, why would you say something like that? This ceremony is supposed to be dignified, and having a family like yours here, which isn't exactly wealthy, kind of takes away from that sophistication. So, could you kindly leave as soon as you can? On the day of my brother's wedding, our family's happiness started to fade when my brother's bride-to-be, dressed in her flawless white gown, spoke words that felt cold and heavy, overshadowing her beautiful appearance and casting a shadow over our spirit. She looked down on our family, aware of the others watching, leaving us completely taken aback. It seemed she believed our simple presence lowered the prestige of her world. Her baseless insults were directed only at us, showing a clear disdain for our family. Yet in response to this unjust treatment, only our dad burst into laughter, as if to lighten the mood. "Hey, what an interesting situation," Dad said, his laughter surprising everyone around and bringing a moment of silence to the crowd. "I'm Karen, 22 years old, living a pretty normal life. I graduated from an average university and now work as an admin at a reputable company. Ordinary is probably the best word to describe my journey so far. My dad, on the other hand, is a renowned figure in neurology. After years at a university hospital, he started his own clinic. Now semi-retired, he focuses fully on brain research. The clinic is currently managed by a protege of his. My parents and friends often ask why I didn't follow in the medical footsteps. They expect a lot from me, but I always say the same thing. The responsibility of dealing with life and death is too much for me. I want to make a difference and help people, but that doesn't mean I'm ready to take on the noble role of a doctor." My brother James, however, chose differently. 3 years my senior, he's always been academically brilliant and got into a prestigious medical school directly. He's also quite handsome, which makes him popular. But his academic and social success seems to have changed him, especially after a certain point. Back when I was in high school, my brother's social life took off after he got into medical school. His dates became the talk of the town, and his trips home grew few and far between. Though he was supposedly immersed in university life, his social media painted a different picture, one where he was often seen enjoying the company of various women. This pattern didn't escape our father's notice, and it sparked a family argument when my brother dropped by home after weeks away. During this rare visit, my dad confronted him, visibly upset. "James, can you explain what exactly you're doing with your time at university?" James, ever the casual one, shrugged it off. "What's the big deal, Dad? I'm passing my classes and doing fine with my grades." But Dad wasn't having any of it. "It's not just about grades," he said sternly. "Being a doctor is more than that. You need to be able to understand and share the feelings of your patients." James, impatient, replied, That's such a hassle. Nowadays, if you're skilled, you can be anything. Can we not stick to these old-fashioned ideas?" Dad was taken aback and deeply upset by his response. James grew more defiant. "I can't stand this oppressive vibe. Please, just stop interfering in my life, Dad." During these exchanges, my brother boldly stated his views, not sparing me either. He made it clear he thought little of me, saying things like, "You're nowhere near my level. Clumsy as you are, you're lucky to have a brother like me." Every time he visited, he'd throw insults my way. Growing up, I'd always measured myself against him, which left me unable to stand up for myself. Despite finishing his medical studies, my brother hit a roadblock. He passed the national exam but couldn't land a job at any healthcare facility. He was confident in his abilities and even applied to 2 top university hospitals, only to be rejected by both. It turned out the issue was his attitude during the interviews. We learned what really happened through some of my dad's friends at those hospitals. Despite his qualifications, his lack of experience and, more importantly, his demeanor in those interviews seemed to be the deal breakers. My brother displayed an arrogant demeanor, confidently asserting that he could boost the hospital's finances, and openly mocked our father's advice to prioritize patient empathy with a disdainful chuckle. Upon learning about my brother's predicament, my father, torn between disappointment and hope, addressed him with a blend of calm and authority. "James, You'll start working at our family clinic for now, he proposed. My brother was taken aback. Why should I do that? My father calmly but firmly pressed on. It's a temporary measure until you find your footing elsewhere. Use this time to get back to the basics. James accepted, albeit grudgingly, his face a mix of resignation and discontent. His attitude toward our family was unmistakably filled with resentment. Yet, in his confusion and frustration, he was embraced by our father, who offered him a chance to start anew. Whether motivated by paternal love, professional ethics, or another reason, my father hoped James would evolve into a compassionate doctor. Despite this, James showed no signs of wanting to meet those expectations. Now employed at our father's clinic, patient grievances about him are frequent, and rumors of his poor conduct spread widely. Instead of improving, James's egocentric behavior has intensified within the clinic. He boasts about eventually succeeding our father as the clinic's director, causing unease among everyone. We're left to hope that, eventually, my father's sincere wishes will resonate with James. In the midst of this, James brought home a surprising guest to introduce to us as his fiancée A. "This is my fiancée A," he announced with assurance. We were rendered speechless by the abruptness of the introduction. While his fiancée A appeared sophisticated and well-mannered at first glance, there was something off about her demeanor and smile that made me uneasy. The way she looked at our family with a subtly arrogant smile raised questions and discomfort within me. I couldn't help but wonder what lay behind that unsettling presence. Was it all in my head, or was there something more to be wary of? The unease I felt since the day we met my future sister-in-law lingers. Despite my reservations, the wheels for my brother's wedding were set in motion. Since getting engaged, my brother, who once lived by himself, started coming home more often. Yet, these visits weren't about cherishing family time. They were about seeking financial aid from our parents for his upcoming wedding. Just the other day, he was asking for a significant sum for the wedding, I remember. "James," my father began, "I'm glad you're getting married, but as someone about to start a new family, you need to connect with each patient genuinely." "How many times will I hear this lecture?" "I engage with my patients enough," James retorted, clearly annoyed. "Then why do we keep hearing complaints?" "Some patients have even asked to switch doctors," my father countered, citing specific incidents to make his point. "Those complaints probably come from not meeting their expectations." "They should just listen and not complain all the time," James snapped back. My father, with a sterner voice, said, "Your attitude is the issue. It's affecting the hospital's reputation. You need to understand the seriousness of this." James, irritated, conceded, "Fine, I get it. Be more empathetic, right? If that's what it takes, then help me with the wedding costs." I want it to be memorable for Nancy. We were briefly moved by James's fervent appeal. After some thought, my father agreed with a condition. "Okay, James, but you must become a responsible doctor and a supportive husband." "Yes, Dad. I'll be the dependable doctor you envision." "If I keep my word, will you help with the wedding?" James promised. "Deal. We'll support the wedding," my father concluded, hoping James would live up to his promise. "I'll have the estimates for you later," James said. And when he finally sent them over, the figure was a staggering $50,000. Holding the estimate, which took me by surprise, I turned to my father unsure. "Dad, are you sure about this? Are we really going to spend so much on the wedding?" A wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. James wants to make it memorable for Nancy and himself, and I understand that desire, Dad explained. But I couldn't help wondering if this was just my brother being extravagant. "But $50,000, Dad? Isn't that a bit much?" "It's okay, Karen. I believe James has begun to see things differently. Maybe even taken some time to reflect," Dad reassured me. Though I remained skeptical about my brother's capacity for such reflection. "Even so, Dad, when it's my turn, you'll do the same for me, right?" I asked, half jokingly. "Of course, Karen. When your time comes, I'll be there for you too," he promised. Which didn't exactly address my concerns, but at least confirmed his support was unconditional. Resolved that the financial decisions were ultimately Dad's to make, I tried to put aside my doubts about James's intentions. However, my worry didn't just disappear. On a day off, as I was enjoying some shopping in the city center, I unexpectedly bumped into James and Nancy. They greeted me with smiles that seemed to carry a hidden agenda. "Look who it is, Karen. Long time no see. You're coming to the wedding next month, right?" James asked, as if there was any chance I'd miss it. "Of course, I'll be there." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, though the enthusiasm wasn't mutual. "Just make sure you bring a nice gift, okay?" James added, setting an awkward tone. Nancy then chimed in. "Karen, have you thought about how much you're going to give for the wedding gift?" I hesitated. "Well, I've looked up what's usual. If it's less than $3,500, you might want to think again," she suggested, catching me completely off guard. "Is that normal?" I asked, puzzled by such an expectation. "It's only common sense, right? Especially for family," Nancy insisted, leaving me flabbergasted. This was the first I'd heard of such common sense, and it left me wondering where these expectations were coming from. Understanding the usual range for a wedding gift from siblings to be around $800 to $12, I had initially decided to generously contribute $2,000 to steer clear of any potential friction. Yet, being confronted with such a staggering and unexpected demand from Nancy left me dumbfounded. The audacity to suggest a gift of at least $3,500 was something I couldn't fathom. What assumptions were they operating under to demand such a significant amount, especially from someone not directly involved in the wedding? This incident only intensified the uneasy feelings I had harbored since our first encounter, painting my future sister-in-law as someone who might prove challenging to get along with. After processing the shock, I discussed this development with my parents back home. To my surprise, they maintained a composed stance and concurred that $2,000 was a fitting sum for a wedding gift. Despite my reluctance to bend to Nancy's unrealistic expectations, I agreed to proceed with the original amount I had in mind, believing it to be a judicious choice under the circumstances. With mixed feelings of duty and anticipation, coupled with ongoing reservations about my brother's choices, I attended his wedding. Dressed in an elegant green ensemble, I allowed the celebratory ambiance, with its vibrant decorations and sumptuous banquet, to momentarily distract me from my concerns. The ceremony was beautiful, transporting us through time with its splendor. However, the time for photos brought an unwelcome jolt back to reality. As Nancy and my brother approached our table, her smile carried an unmistakable tinge of contempt. "Oh, just showing up like usual, huh? Having a poor family here really drags down the whole events class. Maybe you could leave a bit early?" she suggested with a sneer. Her words were like a slap in the face, igniting a fury in me I hadn't known before. The notion of being labeled as a poor family was absurd and utterly reprehensible. Not just IE, but our parents too were taken aback, rendered speechless by such blatant disrespect. My brother's reaction, a hearty laugh, only added insult to injury, leaving me staring at him, bewildered and demanding an explanation for such inexcusable behavior. My voice shook as I confronted my brother. "Wait, how can you just stand there? Why would Nancy say something so terrible?" I demanded an explanation, puzzled and hurt. James's response was filled with a smug arrogance. "Because it's true. You're looking at the winner here. I'm on my way to becoming the head of the clinic, a real success in life," he boasted, his laughter ringing with contempt. It was as if he was announcing his victory to us, the so-called losers, completely oblivious to the fact that his position was largely thanks to our father's support. Our family was stunned into silence, but Nancy wasn't finished. "When will you stop groveling to James? Relying on your child's success? How pathetic," Nancy sneered, turning her mockery towards me. "You work at some low-tier company, don't you? And a wedding gift of just $2,000? How laughable!" I tried to defend myself, but her words cut deep. It's just that I began, but she continued her relentless critique, insinuating that we were all trying to ride on my brother's coattails because he was destined to be the next clinic director. "Next clinic director?" I echoed in disbelief. "Yes, exactly. James is the chosen one, Nancy said, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. Standing beside her, James wore a look of satisfaction, as if everything Nancy said was an indisputable truth. According to Nancy, our family was financially struggling, a narrative my brother seemed to have shared, painting himself as the clinic's future leader, a claim that was news to everyone, including the current director. The mood among the guests shifted uncomfortably at these revelations. James and Nancy, however, seemed unaffected, their smiles growing even more disdainful. But the moment that changed everything was when my father suddenly burst into laughter. His deep, hearty laughter filled the room, altering the atmosphere entirely. "What a splendid joke this is," he declared, still chuckling. Feeling uneasy, I turned to him for some kind of reassurance. "It's fine, just let it go." "Let's head home," he said, still laughing. His laughter somehow made it easier to breathe, reminding us that the value of our family couldn't be diminished by such baseless arrogance. I stood there, shocked, as my father announced we were leaving the wedding early. "We're not welcome here, just seen as a poor family to mock," he said with a resignation that took me by surprise. I wanted to protest, to argue that we shouldn't let their words drive us away, but my father was already moving towards the exit. Meanwhile, my brother and his wife seemed almost eager to see us leave. Then, turning to James with a serene composure, my father said, "I'm not sure why you feel the need to pretend, but you should keep your ego in check." James, taken aback, responded, "What do you mean, Dad?" "I'm not pretending anything." "Is that so?" My father continued then, "As the next director, you should be able to demonstrate your abilities elsewhere, not just rely on this hospital." He then discreetly spoke to the current director, who nodded in agreement with whatever was being discussed. "Now leave this place. Find a job at another hospital," my father advised James, who was visibly stunned by this directive. "If you're truly meant to be a director, you'll succeed anywhere with your skills. Or is it that you're not as confident as you claim?" Caught off guard, James fell silent, his defiance melting away. Nancy, by his side, turned pale, gripping his arm tightly, unable to comprehend the situation. "James, what's going on? How can your dad dismiss you like that?" James remained silent, his body language reflecting a turmoil of emotions he couldn't articulate. Nancy's voice became more insistent, seeking clarity on the promises James had made about their future. Amidst her probing, James seemed lost, disconnected from the conversation around him. Observing this, my father offered a smile filled with patience and understanding. "Nancy, there's more to the story than you know. The hospital James works at is the same one I used to run," he explained, revealing a truth that surprised her. "But Dad, aren't you working independently now?" Nancy questioned, echoing one of the many fabrications James had spun. The reality was far from the tales James had told. My father's gentle clarification began to unravel the web of deceit, painting a picture of the situation that was rooted in truth, not in the inflated stories James had shared. The reality of our family situation is much different from what Nancy had been led to believe. I am indeed a doctor. My wife dedicates herself to our home, and Karen has a stable job in a leading management position within a prominent company. This revelation shocked Nancy, dismantling the illusion that we were a financially struggling family. In truth, James has faced numerous setbacks in his medical career, and I've had to support him through his job search challenges. There was never a plan to appoint him as the director of the hospital. The unfolding events at the wedding solidified my decision that releasing James from his position at the hospital was the right move, allowing me to do so without any reservations. As I laid bare these truths, the atmosphere shifted dramatically, burdening Nancy with a new reality. When I announced my decision to let James go and refuse to cover the extravagant $50,000 wedding bill, Nancy's disbelief and distress were palpable. With a steady resolve, I signaled for us to leave the venue, my wife and Karen following suit. As we departed, Nancy's protests lingered in the air, a stark contrast to the composed exit we made. The aftermath of that day was telling. The wedding ceremony was ultimately called off. The guests dispersed, and the anticipated funds to cover the wedding expenses were not realized, placing a heavy financial burden on James and Nancy. Both found themselves jobless, with Nancy having quit her job in expectation of a more comfortable life, and James, despite being a doctor, struggling to secure stable employment. The financial strain forced them into debt as they scrambled to manage through part-time work, their hopes of securing positions in reputable hospitals growing dimmer. As for our family, we've moved past the incident, no longer engaging in conversations about my brother. My parents have shifted their focus away from his future, bringing back a sense of peace and contentment to our home. This experience has underscored a crucial lesson. No matter one's intellect or qualifications, without empathy and respect for others, acceptance in society remains elusive. I believe that being able to connect and communicate effectively with others is more crucial than having top-notch grades. This is something my fath Nancy Eyre has always emphasized, and it's a principle I hold dear. I'm dedicated to becoming someone who can really resonate with people on a personal level. Moving forward, I'm committed to putting even more effort into enhancing my ability to interact and build meaningful relationships with those around me. In the soft glow of the evening, as I sat in my living room, the sudden buzz of the intercom broke the silence. Brushing away tears, I glanced at the screen to see my mother-in-law and Martha waiting outside. A wave of relief washed over me, thinking they were here to lend a hand. With quick steps, I reached the door and swung it open, only to freeze in surprise. "Please, bring everything inside," my mother-in-law instructed, and a group of people, chirpy and full of energy, who appeared to be movers, made their way in, apologizing as they passed by me. Confused and overwhelmed, I blurted out, "What? What's happening?" My voice must have carried because my son, Roger, rushed down from his room, worry etched on his face. "What's wrong, Mom?" he asked, eyeing the movers who were now swiftly occupying our space with boxes and furniture. I don't know," I stammered, turning to look at him, equally puzzled. Suddenly, the harsh reality was voiced. "We're taking over this house. It's time for you to leave," my father-in-law, Terry, commanded with a firmness that brooked no argument, even as the movers continued their task. Roger's face drained of color. "No, you can't do this. Auntie, don't they know?" he pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. "This house, it's not Dad's anymore. And it's haunted." The room fell silent as Terry paused and the movers halted, all eyes on Roger, who was now shaking. "My name is Christina, and I'm 39, married to Keith, who is 40 and a dedicated businessman. Keith, the epitome of calmness, doesn't indulge in vices. He's all about work and spending cozy movie nights with me. Our son, Roger, once a regular companion on these family evenings, now found himself busy with middle school, leaving Keith and me reminiscing about the past. Keith often spoke fondly of his school days, proud of his decision to attend a local public high school over the prestigious one where his parents taught. He was a star student, involved in leadership roles and cherished memories with his high school buddy, Terry. You were a model student, weren't you? I'd tease him. His response, always with a laugh, was a reminder of simpler, happy times. Are you enjoying this? I asked him once during a movie night. Yes, he replied. Then looking around, he added, no, it's more than that. It's happiness. He spoke of our home, our family, with a sincerity that warmed my heart. I have everything I need. A wonderful wife, a lively son, he said, his honesty making me feel cherished. You meant to say a beautiful wife, I corrected, half joking, half serious. In this unexpected turmoil amidst movers and declarations of eviction, Keith's words echoed, a reminder of the love and unity that made this house a home, haunted or not. I playfully swung my arm towards Keith, and he dodged it with a laugh, affirming, yes, having a beautiful wife does indeed make me the happiest. Our current goal is to buckle down and work hard towards paying off our house's mortgage. Keith has arranged our finances in such a way that I can focus on being a stay-at-home mom without the stress of financial burdens weighing us down. I often find myself thinking how fortunate I am to have Keith, a man so considerate and kind as my partner. While we were sitting side by side, Lost in the storyline of a DVD, these thoughts warmly filled my mind. Keith frequently shares how content he is with our married life. However, I can't shake off the feeling that his happiness was not as profound before we got married, especially during the times he spent at his parents' home. The tension and strained relationships he has with his family, particularly with his parents and his sister Martha, are evident and point towards underlying issues. The genesis of these issues, from what I've gathered, seems to revolve around Keith's decision to not attend the high school his parents had chosen for him. In contrast, Martha, who is 3 years his senior, complied with all their parents' wishes. She attended the high school they chose for her, maintained the high grades they expected, and even secured a job at a company they approved of. According to Keith, Martha's compliance has made her overly reliant on their parents, leaving her with a diminished capacity to make independent decisions or adapt to unforeseen circumstances. This dependency manifested clearly when Martha ventured into the workforce. Accustomed to operating under explicit instructions, she found herself paralyzed in a work environment that demanded initiative and independence. Her discomfort and inability to adapt led her to resign in less than a year. Subsequently, her parents hurriedly arranged a marriage for her, choosing a husband on her behalf. Despite having a capable son in Keith, they went as far as to adopt my brother-in-law, making him part of their household, a move that puzzled me greatly. I often ponder over the need for Keith's parents to adopt another son when they already had Keith, who was perfectly capable and deserving of their love and attention. Keith's father is an ordinary businessman, yet there seemed an undue emphasis on projecting a certain image, particularly through the education of their children. They stretched their finances to send Keith and Martha to private high schools, a decision Keith attributes to his parents' desire to maintain a facade of affluence and prestige. Keith recounted stories of a wealthy family living near his parents, with a daughter the same age as Martha. The girls spent their childhood playing together, but as they entered elementary school, their paths began to diverge. This story, among others, sheds light on the complex dynamics and pressures within Keith's family, illustrating a pattern of decisions driven more by external appearances than by the well-being and preferences of the family members themselves. She attended a private school and started to drift apart from the other kids in our neighborhood. Keith's parents didn't have any big problems with that family, but they seemed pretty jealous. They worked hard to save money so Martha could go to private school too. Because of this, we often had simple meals at home. But Martha's school lunches were fancy, leading to a strange mix in what we ate. Keith decided he didn't want to deal with the pressure of a private school, so he chose a public high school instead. I think it was a smart choice, but his parents were really upset and started treating him differently. They used to love showing off about Martha's fancy school. When people asked about Keith, they probably felt a bit ashamed to say he went to a public school. They imagined a fancier lifestyle than they needed, which wasn't really better. Keith's family and Martha's, with her 2 kids, rent their house. Renting isn't bad, but I wonder if they could have spent their money better instead of just trying to look good. They borrowed money for Martha's education and are still paying it back. I've never really gotten how they think about money. This also shows up in how they give Christmas gifts. Martha's kids get more than Roger, which doesn't seem fair, especially since they all live together. It's sad to see Roger affected by this too. They also don't like that we own our house, a 3-story place with 4 bedrooms bigger than theirs. They make comments like, "Pretty fancy for a public school family," and say our nice house doesn't suit us. When they visit, they pick on small things like a stain or a scratch on the floor, and say our house isn't that great. Honestly, their attitude is pretty annoying. They don't have to come over if they don't like it here. Keith thinks they act this way because they're jealous. They don't have a lot of money, but we have our own house, even though we're still paying for it. Keith jokes that it's because they always want to look good to others. My brother-in-law probably earns a decent salary, and my father-in-law is still working in his 50s, but their debts slow them down. "Don't worry about it," Keith always says. But when Keith and Roger aren't home, my mother-in-law and Martha come over. Lately, they've started walking around our house while I'm busy in the kitchen. They talk about changing rooms to their liking, which is pretty bold. When I caught them and showed I was annoyed, They just faked a smile and made a snarky comment about me being slow with the tea. I had to ask them to go back to the living room and was shocked when my mother-in-law asked for a spare key. I couldn't give her one, knowing she might snoop around our things. It was strange for them to ask for a key after treating Keith poorly. I told them I'd talk to Keith about the key, and later, we said no over the phone. My mother-in-law was mad, but we made it clear they should only visit when one of us is home. Keith's health suddenly became a concern. He was diagnosed with cancer after some tests, which left us speechless. The cancer was more advanced than we thought. The doctor said he didn't have long without surgery. Our insurance wouldn't cover all the costs, including the hospital bills, living expenses, and our house mortgage. Everything we had built seemed to fall apart. I was scared of losing Keith and worried about our future, feeling completely overwhelmed. I thought about asking my parents for help, but they're no longer with us. And being an only child, I didn't have other family to turn to. So, we decided to ask Keith's parents and Martha for help. We explained Keith's situation and how cancer treatments can work wonders these days. Martha didn't seem to understand how serious it was, and Keith's parents and Martha hesitated to offer financial support. I remember hearing you've paid off your debts recently. We mentioned, hoping they'd consider helping. We promised to pay you back. Could you lend us the money for Keith's surgery and hospital stay? The same money you saved for my private school tuition, could we use it now? We'll work hard to repay you, we pleaded with them, desperate for their help. But they refused, saying they had just started enjoying a bit of luxury. I suggested that my life insurance could cover the mortgage if something happened to me, and we could sell the house to repay them. I even offered to write a promise note. Despite our pleas, they remained unmoved. Why don't you sell the house now? They suggested. Selling the house was a thought. But after paying off the mortgage, we'd need to make sure there was enough left for Keith's treatment, hospital bills, and finding a new place to live. Keith had been sending money home even when he was single. It seemed only right that they help him now. But no matter how much we begged, their answer didn't change. Keith finally said it was enough, and we left. As we were leaving, my brother-in-law caught up to us and gave us $4,000, apologizing for not having more. He had been contributing to their debt repayments too. I'll try talking to them again, he promised, asking us not to lose hope. We thanked him for his kindness. Do you have any other plans? He asked. Yes, we're considering selling the house like Martha suggested, I replied, shocked by the reality of the situation. Selling a house isn't easy. It involves a lot of steps and wouldn't be quick enough, especially with Keith's upcoming hospital admission. Plus, we'd need to find somewhere new to live. It's not as simple as it sounds. It's okay. I know someone who can help, Keith said with a hopeful smile. Over the 3 years since his cancer was found, Keith fought bravely. Even though doctors said he had just a few months, he made many happy moments with us. There were many hospital visits, but we made the best of them. When the doctor told us Keith might not come home again, I called his family. They visited a few times, quickly leaving after a short visit, as if they were just checking on him. I didn't want to think they were only wondering how much time he had left. When it was clear Keith didn't have much time, I called my mother-in-law. Oh no, that's awful. We'll hurry, she said, but she sounded unsure and hung up quickly. Despite feeling uneasy, I went back to Keith and our son, Roger, in the hospital room. In the end, only my brother-in-law, coming straight from work, and Keith's good friend Terry, made it to see him. Keith opened his eyes weakly to see us before closing them one last time. My brother-in-law and Terry took care of the funeral stuff while we went home to get things ready. They stayed with Keith and Terry drove us. We had rushed out in the morning, and by the time we returned, it was already evening. Our breakfast dishes were still out. In the quiet of the evening, I turned on the lights and started looking through a photo album in the living room. Tears began to fall as I picked out a photo for the memorial service. Then the doorbell rang. I wiped my tears and saw my mother-in-law and Martha on the monitor. They hadn't made it in time to see Keith, but they were here now. I went to open the door, ready to greet them. I was shocked when I opened the door and heard my mother-in-law telling people to bring things inside. Movers started walking into our house, apologizing as they went. I was so confused and asked, "What's happening?" Roger ran downstairs, also confused, asking me what was going on. I didn't understand either. My son's house is now ours. You need to leave, my mother-in-law said, with my father-in-law organizing the movers as they filled our house with stuff. Roger suddenly got upset and said, "No, this house isn't Dad's now, and it's haunted." When he said this, everything stopped and everyone looked at Roger. Then Terry walked in, yelling at everyone for bringing stuff into someone else's house without asking. He made such a noise that even the neighbors might have heard. The movers, confused, started taking everything they brought back outside. Then my nephew and his kids showed up, upset about their things being left outside. My brother-in-law was angry. He thought he was helping with a move, but was confused by the situation. In the middle of the chaos, he said he couldn't handle it anymore and wanted a divorce from Martha. He arranged for his and his kids' things to go to his parents' house. He apologized for the trouble and left with the kids, not even looking at Martha. Martha was left crying on the street, and my in-laws didn't know what to do with all the stuff everywhere. Neighbors started watching, making it even more embarrassing. Terry then suggested we move the belongings inside to clear the street. I agreed with Terry, saying it was okay to bring the stuff inside since it was technically their house now. My in-laws looked confused when I said that. So, I explained the whole story. 3 years back, after Keith's parents didn't help us, Keith brought home Terry, who looked pretty tough. Terry owns a real estate business and even gave me his business card. I had heard he was Keith's high school friend, but he looked so tough that I thought he was involved in some scary business. Roger was so frightened that he stayed close to me. Keith noticed me looking worried and laughed, saying Terry might look scary, but he's actually a well-respected businessman. Even Roger seemed to be easing up a bit around him. Terry, despite his serious look, playfully hit Keith on the head, which shocked me, especially since Keith was unwell, but they both just laughed it off. Terry hadn't come to our wedding or visited us at home, which now made sense because Keith had told me stories about his good friend Terry from school. Terry joked about not attending social events because his tough look might scare people, which is why he joked he was still single. As Keith and Terry joked around, it reminded me that this was the Terry Keith had always talked about. I laughed, apologizing for interrupting their moment, noting how Keith always got so lively around him. Roger joked about the importance of a father's dignity, which lightened the mood further. I shared with Terry how Keith had wished he could come to our wedding, and we'd love for him to visit us anytime. Then, Terry got down to business, saying we didn't have much time. He checked every part of the house from each room to the exterior walls and the meter box. After inspecting everything, Terry opened his laptop, typed something, and then showed us the screen. Terry showed us a price for the house that really surprised me. It was much more than what we originally paid. I worried it was too high, especially since our house was pretty old and hadn't been updated in years. There were marks and the wooden floors were worn out. But Terry said not to worry, mentioning how my in-laws were already planning how to use the rooms, meaning they saw it as perfectly livable. Keith reassured me to trust Terry, so I agreed to sell at that price. Terry quickly got some papers out. Then, he mentioned we'd need a new place to live. Among the papers, he also had rental agreements. His plan was to buy our house and then rent it back to us. This solved our problems all at once. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Terry promised to transfer the sale money to us soon, which we could use to pay off our mortgage. He was so confident, and his smile made him look more friendly than scary. While signing the papers, I saw the rent was listed as $400. Keith, Roger, and I thought it was a typo, expecting it to be $4,000, but Terry corrected us, saying it was no mistake. He felt he owed Keith a lot. Keith didn't think so, but Terry shared stories from their school days. Terry used to get into a lot of trouble back then, which upset his mom a lot. Once, his mom, who raised him alone, ended up in the hospital from too much stress and tiredness. When Terry got to the hospital and saw his mom looking so weak, he realized his actions were causing her stress. He broke down, feeling really guilty, and decided to change. He stopped getting into fights and stayed away from trouble. But then someone found a cigarette butt on the school's roof that had started a small fire. Everyone thought Terry did it because of his reputation, even though he didn't. The school wanted to kick him out, and Terry was scared of upsetting his mom again. Keith was the only person who believed Terry didn't do it. Keith was actually the student council president, and they hadn't really talked much before this happened. Keith stood up for Terry, went to the principal to defend him, and even found the person who actually caused the fire. Terry was grateful because Keith's help meant he could finish high school, take care of his mom, and later start his own business. That's why Terry felt he owed Keith a lot. After sharing this story, we all felt thankful for Terry's offer about the rent. 3 years ago, this whole thing happened, and now Terry owned our house but was letting us rent it. He even offered to show the documents to prove it and said he could rent it to any of our family members for a good price. The funeral went smoothly, and we moved into a 3-bedroom apartment, Terry suggested. He mentioned we'd probably move back into our house soon. I was curious why he thought that, and so was Roger, who came over to hear more. I was thinking about asking them to leave, but then Terry came up with a different idea. 3 days later, we went back to the house, saying we forgot some things. Terry was with us, and my mother-in-law made us tea and snacks, but not very happily. "How do you find living here?" Roger casually asked his grandfather, who happily said it was great. "Really? Do you ever hear weird noises like on the stairs or in the bathroom?" Roger then acted scared and talked about how he thought he saw someone on the stairs when we weren't home, but there was nobody there. My mother-in-law said that was silly, but at that moment, Roger and Terry acted as if they heard something upstairs. Martha, who was quiet because she was sad about her divorce, didn't say anything. "Let's stop talking about creepy things." "I didn't hear anything," she said. Roger and Terry quickly left with us. Outside, my in-laws looked really scared. In the car, we all laughed. Terry had used the ghost story Roger made up as a sort of punishment for how they treated Keith. Terry was upset about how they were ready to move into Keith's house without caring about him. It seemed like the more Terry and Roger talked about ghosts, the more my in-laws started to believe the house was haunted by actual ghosts. They got so scared, they eventually moved out. Terry helped them find another place to live that was affordable. "That was just business," he said, clearly pleased with himself. We all thought he did great. Martha, who had to start working again after her divorce, was now facing real-life challenges on her own. It was a big change for everyone now that they had to look after themselves. In the end, we went back to living in the house that Keith and I originally bought. We can't own it again, but we're staying there, paying just $400 each month. The brother-in-law and his 2 kids are visiting more now. Martha seems to want to reunite with him, but he's not interested at the moment. Terry visits us once a month, pretending it's to collect the rent. But really, it's on the day Keith passed away. After we honor Keith's memory, we all have dinner together. Terry even takes the time to listen to Roger, who's in high school now, talk about what's on his mind. Roger and I find a special happiness in the stories Terry shares about Keith's school days during these dinners. Many of these stories are new to us and show sides of Keith we hadn't seen before. I like to think Keith enjoys these moments with us, joking around like he used to.
After returning from a week-long international trip, I was pleasantly surprised when my mother-in-law, Linda, called me with an air of victory. She mentioned something about a $30,000 windfall we had apparently saved. Confused, I tried to recall any recent instance where I had amassed such a sum. As a freelance jewelry designer, I do maintain a savings account for unexpected expenses, but I certainly don't keep large amounts of cash around, and my bank card was securely with me. Normally, no one else has access to withdraw such a substantial amount from my account. You gave it to me, so I took it from the sideboard drawer. You guys are doing well, so it's fine, Linda declared over the phone, leaving me bewildered. Before I could understand more, she quickly thanked me and hinted at counting on me for future financial help before hanging up. I was left puzzled about the missing $30,000 until Kevin, my husband, returned home and cleared up the confusion it was a misunderstanding. However, a month later, Linda bombarded me with numerous calls. I chose to ignore them initially, but the constant ringing eventually compelled me to answer. Over 60 missed calls displayed on my phone screen was disconcerting. As I picked up, Linda's shrill voice filled the room, accusing me of ignoring her. Her tone suggested she felt wronged, but to me, it was merely the consequences of her assumptions. My life as Mary, a 35-year, busy freelance jewelry designer wanting children but overwhelmed by work, is shared with my equally busy husband, Kevin. He originally had a corporate job, but now assists me in managing my growing design business. Early in our marriage, my designing gigs were sparse, and we largely depended on Kevin's steady income. Now, as my business flourishes, our roles and responsibilities have evolved, but so have our challenges, like dealing with unexpected family misunderstandings about money. As I neared the age of 33, my career as a jewelry designer had begun to flourish, necessitating better organization of my increasingly hectic schedule. Sensing the growing demands of my business, my husband Kevin, who was well placed in his company and on track for promotion, made a bold decision. He resigned from his job to partner with me, applying his skills in management to our joint venture. Together, we secured contracts with prestigious international brands, enhancing both our professional and personal lives. However, managing success came with its unique set of challenges, particularly involving Kevin's mother, Linda. Living alone in the family home, she perceived our lives through a lens of luxury and often approached us with financial requests. "You always seem to be living so lavishly. I'm jealous," she would comment. As part of my role, attending product launches and dinners with executives was routine, yet Linda saw these obligations as mere leisure. Her requests grew more personal over time. "I want to throw a party for my friends soon. Can you give me some money for it?" she asked on one occasion. Although it might appear that we could easily afford such expenses, maintaining our business image was costly and filled with obligations that we couldn't ignore. We weren't living in luxury. These were necessary aspects of our work. Linda, draped in envy and often sarcasm, failed to grasp the nature of our expenses. "Dressed up beautifully, eating at expensive places, I envy you," she'd say. Despite my repeated refusals, Kevin, being her son, would occasionally acquiesce to her demands, reasoning that a little financial help was a small price for peace. "If giving her a little money keeps her quiet, then it's worth it," he'd argue, finding it simpler to appease her than to have our work disrupted. Yet, Linda's demands only escalated. Recently, she expressed a desire for a new dress for an upcoming gathering. Just the other day, Linda came over and pestered Kevin. "Wouldn't a two-piece suit work? We've been asked to buy clothes before. There might be cheaper options, but what Linda wants is certainly not cheap," I explained. Her rebuttal was that it was a fancy party and she couldn't be the only one dressed in old clothes. Furthermore, she insisted on a matching bag, leaving us exasperated. To manage her frequent requests, Kevin had previously set up a credit card in Linda's name, instructing her to use it for her expenses. Initially, she overspent significantly and was cautioned by Kevin. Although he asked her to inform us before making significant purchases, she continued her extravagant spending. This pattern of financial demands has left both Kevin and I at our wits' end, trying to balance the delicate act of supporting family while maintaining the integrity and sustainability of our business. I discovered an exquisite ring and couldn't resist purchasing it, though I regret not informing you beforehand. Unfortunately, the bill was exorbitant. If spending is going to be this unrestrained, perhaps it's best to return the card. We simply cannot cover these costs. The credit card was in Linda's name, but Kevin was the one managing and paying the bills. Linda seemed to misunderstand the purpose of the credit card, treating it as if it were an unlimited resource. She didn't grasp that every purchase made would eventually need to be paid for, and since the money wasn't coming directly from her own pocket, she continued to use it freely. Recognizing the need to curb her spending, Kevin decided to set a spending limit on her card. This led to Linda storming into our home one day, frustrated and complaining, What the heck? I couldn't pay for my shopping the other day. Why? We explained that her excessive spending was straining our finances, which necessitated lowering her monthly limit. It's still enough, right? Kevin asked her, trying to maintain some peace. But you two are still dressing up, going to fancy places. How is what I'm doing any different? Linda protested, viewing our activities as purely recreational. That's part of our job, Linda. If that's a job, then what I'm doing isn't any different. It's unfair that only you two get to have all the fun, she argued. While it's true that our work involves attending product launches and parties in luxurious venues, these are professional obligations, not leisure activities. Despite her misconceptions, setting a spending limit on Linda's credit card seemed to have calmed the situation somewhat. Occasionally, Linda would visit and air her grievances to Kevin, but overall, life proceeded without major disruptions. As the end of the year approached, an exciting opportunity presented itself. A foreign brand manufacturer approached me with a proposal to expand our business dealings by relocating our base overseas. The prospect thrilled me, as it could potentially elevate me to the ranks of top-tier designers. Kevin, ever supportive as my manager, was all for taking the leap. It's a chance we have to take, he affirmed. However, the prospect of moving abroad brought a new concern Linda. Given her past behavior, it was a legitimate worry that she might insist on joining us overseas. The idea of living internationally was appealing, yet the thought of dealing with Linda's demands in a new country was daunting. When we shared our plans to move overseas for work with Linda that weekend, she responded exactly as we predicted. I want to come too, she declared, assuming our move would be an endless vacation. Kevin tried to clarify. We're going there for work. It won't be leisurely life as you think. But Linda was skeptical. You're trying to trick me. You plan to live even more lavishly there without me watching. We're not moving there permanently. We'll come back after our work is done, I explained, trying to ease her concerns. Yet, she retorted, you're saying that, but you're planning to leave me behind, aren't you? Exhausted by this repetitive argument, Kevin and I were both weary. In an attempt to compromise, Kevin suggested, okay, we can't take you with us, but how about we pay for a week-long trip for you instead? Linda perked up at this. Really? Are you sure? We'll cover your flight and hotel, but you'll need to manage the rest, Kevin affirmed. Pleased, at least for the moment, Linda left our house half-happy. However, the peace was short-lived. A few days later, while Kevin was preoccupied with the overseas move arrangements, Linda dropped by unexpectedly. Hey, Mary, Kevin said that, but I want to shop over there too. Can you give me some money? She asked. What about the card that Kevin gave you? I inquired, knowing she had a designated credit card for such expenses. Linda's face fell. That's the thing. Kevin finally took it away from me the other day. It appeared she had been reprimanded for overspending, and anticipating the challenges of managing finances with different currency rates overseas, Kevin had confiscated the card. I don't have that kind of money on hand either. I can't give you money without Kevin's approval. Can you ask him? I suggested, knowing full well Kevin's stance. It's no use asking him, that's why I'm asking you, she pressed, raising her voice in frustration. Linda did end up going on a 10-day trip abroad, which I assumed Kevin managed to fund somehow. Upon her return, she called me, brimming with excitement. I'm back, and it was so fun. She excitedly shared tales of her sightseeing and dining adventures, though I hadn't asked. And I overbought souvenirs, couldn't fit them in my suitcase, so I had them shipped here. Can't wait for them to arrive. That's nice, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral despite feeling a bit overwhelmed. Thanks to the money you saved up, I had a blast, she exclaimed. Saved up money? What are you talking about? I responded, puzzled and a bit alarmed, having no recollection of setting aside money for her splurge. I had set aside some savings specifically for business emergencies, all securely stored in my bank account. Therefore, it was baffling when Linda mentioned withdrawing a significant sum of money. "You really didn't notice. You're surprisingly oblivious," she remarked. Despite her claims, I had absolutely no memory of such money. "I found it in your house's sideboard drawer," she said, claiming she took $30,000. I was stunned. Why would such a large amount of cash be stashed away at home, especially not in a drawer where anyone could find it? Confused, I confronted her. "I'm not sure what money you're talking about, but taking it from our house without permission is theft, even if you're family. Do you understand that?" Linda's response was unsettlingly casual. "That's why I'm telling you now. I used it. Consider it a post-factum report," she declared unapologetically. "I have no idea about this money, but if you took it and used it without telling anyone, that's a crime. And if it was something Kevin had set aside for an important transaction, it's even more serious," I explained, trying to make sense of the situation. Despite this, there hadn't been any noticeable disruptions in our business finances during her trip. "You two live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that? Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. It's not a big deal, right?" she rationalized, showing a sense of entitlement that was hard to comprehend. "It's one thing to ask for help from your son and his wife, but this is not how you should behave after taking someone else's money," I replied, still in disbelief. "I'm glad you enjoyed your trip, but I'll have to discuss this with Kevin when he returns. Kevin will understand. After all, I'm his only mother, and $30,000 isn't much to him," she assumed. "All right, I'll pass the message along," I said, astounded by her lack of awareness. Later that evening, when Kevin came home, he looked troubled. "Mary, do you know about the money I left in the drawer?" he asked urgently. 15 days ago, I withdrew it from my bank account, and now it's gone." "Keeping such a large sum in a drawer, didn't you think it was careless? I needed cash immediately for an urgent payment. Do you know anything about it?" It suddenly clicked. Linda's earlier call thanking me for the $30,000 and mentioning how much fun she had made sense now. It was Kevin's money, meant for a crucial purpose. Kevin today, Linda called, thanking us for the $30K and saying she had a blast with it. I didn't understand what she meant until now, I explained, piecing everything together. So it was Kevin's money, but what was such a large amount meant for? Hey, if it wasn't for a business payment, we've been doing bank transfers for a long time, right? Why cash all of a sudden? I questioned, trying to understand the whole scenario while dealing with the ramifications of Linda's actions. I was aware it was Kevin's money that had disappeared, but the full context was still unclear to me. Linda, it turned out, had taken the money without informing us, and I needed to understand why. "What do you mean?" I asked Kevin, puzzled by the situation. Kevin began to unravel the backstory. After he had reduced the credit limit on Linda's card, she started secretly borrowing money from various sources, including consumer finance cards and credit cards she had opened without our knowledge. When Kevin discovered her growing debt, he took away all her cards and withdrew cash to settle her debts directly, aiming to bypass the banking system to keep our business accounts clean and maintain trust with our partners. This was also partly a farewell gesture, as we're moving abroad and won't be around to manage such issues for her, Kevin explained. I plan to handle her debts discreetly to prevent our financial records from getting complicated. A month had passed since then, and as I was busy packing for our move, Linda's frequent calls became hard to ignore. When I finally took her call, her voice was tinged with desperation. "Why aren't you answering my calls? I've called so many times," she said, almost in tears. "I'm sorry, Linda. I've been caught up with the move. What's going on?" I asked, trying to remain calm and give her a chance to explain her side. "It's not just one thing, it's everything. They're asking for payments almost every day. It's too much," Linda confessed, her voice cracking under the strain. "Have you tried contacting Kevin about this?" I inquired, hoping she had sought his help first. He seems to be blocking my calls. I can't get through to him at all. Mary, you're my only hope now. Please, help me, she pleaded. I realized then just how complex the situation had become. Linda's financial recklessness had led her into a labyrinth of debt, and now, isolated from Kevin's assistance, she was turning to me as her last resort. As we prepared to start anew in a foreign country, the challenges of dealing with Linda's financial chaos loomed large, demanding immediate attention before we could fully focus on our new beginnings. I was taken aback by Kevin's drastic approach toward his own mother. If he had used the prepared funds to directly settle Linda's debts, this distressing situation might have been avoided. Instead, Linda was now overwhelmed with collections letters and relentless calls from finance companies and consumer lenders. It was a scene reminiscent of something from a dramatic film, one I had never expected to witness in real life. I'll talk to Kevin, but I can't guarantee what he'll do. A son should help his mother in trouble, right? Please ask him for me, Linda pleaded at the end of our conversation. However, with our impending business expansion overseas, our financial resources were already stretched thin, and we couldn't afford to further assist Linda, especially given that she had misused the money meant to settle her debts. When I relayed the details of the call to Kevin upon his return home, he responded with a mixture of fatigue and resignation. I had planned to sort things out before we left, but she squandered that chance herself, he said coldly. Indeed, the money was originally earmarked to clear Linda's debts, but she had instead blown it on a lavish trip, leaving no room for excuses. As Linda's calls persisted, I followed Kevin's lead and set her number to block. Although part of me wished to help her, she was, after all, Kevin's mother. There was nothing I could do if he had chosen to detach from the situation. Meanwhile, the day of our move overseas was quickly approaching, and I still had a lot to pack. Amid the chaos of packing, I discovered another troubling piece of news. Linda had resorted to selling her house to manage her debts. It turned out she had concealed even more liabilities than we knew. The total amount was so substantial that even after selling her property, she couldn't cover it all. The thought of losing the family home where Kevin had grown up was profoundly upsetting. "Hey, our family home is gone. Are you okay with that?" I asked, sensing his sadness. "How can I be okay? But there's nothing we can do," Kevin replied, his voice tinged with sorrow. Losing the house where he grew up must have felt like a great loss, akin to how I felt when I lost my parents' house early in life. In the midst of these complex feelings and the heavy task of packing, we had to come to terms with the fact that some situations were beyond our control and focus on our future as we prepared to start anew in a different country. The bittersweet reality of losing a family home struck me deeply as I observed the situation unfolding with Kevin. Unlike my past experiences, Kevin had not only lost the tangible structure where his earliest memories were formed, but also his emotional sanctuary, all while his mother, Linda, is still alive. It's an indescribable feeling, the mixture of loss and displacement, especially caused under such painful circumstances. The impact is profound and complex, far more than mere bricks and mortar. It's about losing a part of one's history and the comfort of a place to return to that no longer exists. Linda, now residing in a modest apartment, faces the daily grind of managing her debts. She works part-time, a reality that is challenging given her age. Employment opportunities for the elderly are not just limited, they're often physically demanding and less rewarding. This stark new reality for her is a drastic shift from her previous life, believed to be filled with unchecked spending and financial freedom. Though sympathy naturally arises seeing her struggle, it's tempered by the knowledge that her situation is the direct result of her own financial imprudence. Life teaches us that actions have consequences, and Linda's case reaffirms the harsh truth that financial responsibility is crucial at any age. Back in our new environment, the business is thriving beyond our initial expectations. The move overseas has catapulted our brand into the international spotlight, bringing in a flurry of inquiries and offers from various corners of the globe. Every new email and call brings potential for expansion and collaboration, which is incredibly exciting but also immensely demanding. The success is exhilarating. However, it envelops our entire lives, leaving little room for anything else. Days blend into nights as we navigate time zones and cultural nuances, striving to make the most of this golden opportunity. Despite the professional achievements, our personal lives bear the weight of our relentless schedules. The dream of expanding our family seems more like a distant vision, something we hope to circle back to when the waves of immediate demand subside. Kevin, who juggles multiple roles from logistics to client management, feels this strain acutely. As partners in both life and business, we find ourselves pondering the future and our priorities, wondering how we can align our professional goals with our personal desires. As I look out of our apartment window, taking in the view of the foreign cityscape, the neon lights blur into the night, mirroring the blur of our daily lives. It's a view filled with promise and anonymity, a stark contrast to the familiar streets we once knew. This city, vibrant and relentless, is now our home, yet it starkly contrasts with the quiet, steady life we left behind. The complexity of our new life is exciting, but also daunting, filled with endless tasks and decisions that challenge us at every turn. Navigating this new chapter, I often find myself reflecting on Linda's situation and the broader implications of our familial and financial decisions. It's a continuous learning curve, understanding how deeply intertwined our choices are with the fabric of our lives. Each decision, each sacrifice, and each success shapes not just our immediate circumstances, but also the legacy we leave behind. As we build this new phase of our life, we remain mindful of the delicate balance between achieving success and maintaining the relationships that define who we are beyond our business achievements. I wasn't threatening anyone. I was really upset by what you and your friends did. I said I would forgive everything if you paid for a meal. So just leave your wallet and go. I realized later that your apology was fake. Both Olivia and Scott had that mocking look on their faces. They planned this from the start. We just sighed as we watched them rant. Just leave your wallet and go. You know what will happen if you talk, they said. Scott is higher up than Larry at work. I just smiled at their words. If they were going to be like that, I wasn't going to hold back. Are you sure about this? You'll regret it, I warned them. They thought I was joking and just laughed it off, saying they didn't care. I put my wallet on the table, and they thanked me mockingly, saying they'd give it to Larry later as a treat. Larry was furious, but I calmed him down and we left, ignoring them. Soon after, we took action and made sure they would regret their actions. I'm Laura. I live a peaceful life with my husband, Larry, and our son, Frank. Larry and I met in college and started talking more when we worked on group projects together. We shared hobbies and began dating soon after. We got married 5 years after graduating. A few years later, we had our son. Larry works in sales and is well respected at his company, though he had a tough start. He admires his father, who managed a company, and Larry wanted to follow in his footsteps in sales. I still get tough feedback, but I want to be like my dad. When Frank was born, my in-laws really helped us out. My mother-in-law went to cooking school and now works as a hostess at a famous restaurant. Her husband works with her, handling the business side. Their advice is always to do your best in whatever you're doing at that moment. I've always liked design. While working in administration, I used to draw for fun. This hobby became useful as I started taking freelance web design jobs. The projects got bigger over time. Then today, Larry came to me with an idea. Hey Laura, our company needs a designer. Want to try it? I really like your designs. It'll be busy, but I'll help you. What do you think? Your designs have a special warmth, he said. At first, I was unsure, but my father-in-law, who was visiting, agreed with Larry. With their encouragement, I decided to work on a design. Once I started, I was determined to do well. Larry and I worked together to come up with the best design. It took some time, but I finally made a design I was proud of. To my joy, they chose my design, and it sold really well. Larry and I were thrilled when we heard the news. We thanked my in-laws for their support, and they were as happy as if they had succeeded themselves. "It's all thanks to your design, Laura," they said. "It's really nothing. Having this experience means a lot. Thank you," I replied. This whole experience was a big moment for me. I started spending more time on web design, which was just a side job at first. Eventually, I made as much money from designing as I did from my day job, so I quit my administrative job and now work as a freelancer. Thanks to Larry's company, I also get to design whenever they launch a new product. Our son Frank, who is now in middle school, has grown into a smart and kind boy. He loves playing soccer for his school club. Life is good, but there's one thing that bothers me. It's about Olivia, whose son Kevin is in the same soccer club as Frank. Frank and Kevin are great friends, and they even ended up in the same class this year and often spend weekends together. Frank talks about Kevin a lot. Kevin came over to our house once, and he was very polite. I was happy Frank had such a good friend. However, Olivia can be a bit too much sometimes. I first met her during the school's open house. It was obvious right away that she was Kevin's mom. "Kevin, you're definitely Mama's pride and joy," she said. "Mom, stop, it's embarrassing," Kevin replied. After the class, during the break, Olivia loudly exclaimed, making Kevin embarrassed. I thought she seemed like a loving mom, but that wasn't quite true. Really, Kevin is by far the best. The others just seemed to be playing around during their presentation, she said loudly. The room went quiet. Kevin looked annoyed and said, "Didn't I tell you to stop?" Everyone took their presentation seriously. I couldn't help but wonder if her comment was really appropriate. Soon after, the parents had to leave for another meeting and started to leave the classroom. "Frank, you did well in your presentation. You have club activities today, right?" I said, "Yeah," Frank replied. "Do your best. I'm going to make your favorite hamburger steak for dinner." "Really? Awesome," Frank said happily. Before leaving the classroom, Frank talked to me, and the other kids told him he was lucky to be getting hamburger steak for dinner. I felt relieved seeing Frank handle the situation smoothly. At the parent-teacher meeting, we could sit anywhere, so I chose a corner seat. That's when Olivia approached and started talking to me. "Aren't you Frank's mother?" she asked suddenly. I was surprised by her directness, but she sat down next to me anyway. "I wanted to meet you. I'm Olivia," she said. I felt a bit trapped but listened to her. I wondered how she knew I was Frank's mother since we hadn't met before. Seeing my confusion, she explained, "You were talking about dinner with Frank earlier, right? That's how I knew. And calling hamburger steak a treat seems so laid back." I was taken aback by her comment about our dinner choice, especially since we just met. "Frank loves hamburger steak, and I don't think it's your place to comment," I replied. She seemed displeased with my response. "Well, that's true. My husband works at a major company, so he doesn't quite get the ordinary tastes," she said. When she asked where my husband worked, I didn't engage further and just brushed her off. Fortunately, the meeting started and we settled down. After the meeting, she asked if I wanted to grab some coffee. I tried to decline a few times, but she insisted, saying, "Come on, it's just some mom friends bonding. Besides, Kevin and Frank are good friends." I felt I had little choice and agreed. We exchanged contact information and went for coffee. During coffee, she talked a lot about her wealthy life and her husband. Since then, she invited me for coffee several times a month. Although our kids got along, I wasn't too happy about it but went along. One time when I declined, she hinted, "You know, my husband knows a lot of people, even Frank's club coach." It felt like a subtle threat, so I maintained the reluctant friendship with Olivia. What shocked me further was finding out that Olivia's husband worked at the same company as Larry. I nearly spit out my drink in surprise when I found out Olivia's husband worked at the same major company as Larry. She had mentioned it was a major company, but never specified which one. I hadn't thought it would be Larry's company. I learned this when Olivia came to pick up Kevin from our house today. Kevin had been over to play, and I had planned to just meet Olivia at the door, but she came inside since the kids were still there. "Isn't your husband working for XOAZ Corporation, Laura?" she asked. I nearly choked on my tea at her question. Seeing my shocked face, Olivia seemed pleased, and I had a bad feeling about where this was headed. "Why?" I asked. "Because I saw a business card in your room with your husband's name on it and recognized the company name," she explained. "Hold on, are you saying you just went into her room?" I asked, shocked. "No, I didn't mean to. I was just looking for the bathroom and happened to open the wrong door," she replied. I was relieved my sons weren't around to hear this. I had given Olivia directions to the restroom, so I truly thought she was lying. But I had only told her verbally, so I couldn't really push back too hard. Indeed, in Larry's room, he has business cards for work. I designed the business cards for Larry's company, so there are several different types, and he had some displayed under a desk protector. She must have seen those. Stunned and at a loss for words, Olivia approached and said, "I really don't like you too." Her previously friendly demeanor had vanished, and her eyes were now sharp and piercing as she glared at me. "Do you enjoy taking work away from other people's husbands?" she accused. "Excuse me," I replied, not understanding her implication. She threw out one last barb. "Well, whatever. Just remember, I'm gonna make sure you regret this." I was speechless and later recounted everything to Larry. "So Scott's wife is Laura's friend," he said, surprised. "It seems so. It must be a coincidence, but she seemed to have some sort of grudge against us," I said. "Who's this Scott guy?" I wondered aloud. Larry took a deep breath and started explaining. "I don't think it's right to talk about such things, but Scott works in the planning department. He's very assertive." Larry explained that the product planning department creates products and works with the sales team to make money. Scott is a key figure in planning and is known for strongly believing in meritocracy, meaning a lot depends on whether he is interested in something or not. Working with him can be great or terrible, people say. I still don't understand why Olivia dislikes us so much. "Yeah, I'm not sure either. I don't really know Scott well," I replied, sorry for dragging you into this mess. "It's okay, but what about Frank and Kevin? It's not good for the kids to be close if their parents are at odds," I said. "Yeah, I'll try to find out more," I promised. A few days later, Olivia called me. I felt anxious but answered. She sounded much more apologetic than before. "I'm so sorry about the other day. I was just stressed about my husband's work not going well," she explained. I listened because she sounded sincere. She apologized and suggested that since our husbands work together, we should try to get along. "How about we all go out for dinner?" she proposed. Considering her past behavior, I was hesitant but thought of our children's friendship and decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. "That's fine. Thank you. I'll arrange the place and let you know the details later," she said, sounding pleased as she ended the call. The day came, and we went to the restaurant Olivia had chosen, known for its seafood. However, Olivia and her husband were nowhere to be seen. I tried calling her. When I mentioned my name to the receptionist, the staff member looked concerned. I was shocked when the receptionist told us, "I'm sorry, but the reservation is only for 3 people." What? Larry and I were confused. What was going on? I asked the staff member to wait and immediately called Olivia. "Hello, Olivia. The restaurant just told me the reservation is for 3 people," I said. She laughed and told us to wait a moment. Soon, Olivia and a man walked in. Larry recognized him. "Scott, good to see you," he said. That's when I realized the man was Scott. Olivia and Scott were smiling broadly, which gave me a bad feeling. "I'm sorry, I made a mistake with the reservation," Olivia said casually, which annoyed me. Then she said something even more shocking. "Well, mistakes happen, but let's not waste the food, right?" "What are you getting at?" I asked. "Look, Larry, I'm soon going to be the head of the planning department. You're doing well in sales, but you're still a newbie. If you don't want things to go sour, you might want to listen to what I have to say," Scott said. "Are you threatening us?" I asked. "It's not a threat," Olivia interjected. "Laura and you have hurt me deeply. I'm offering you a way to make amends. Just leave your wallet and go." I realized then that the apology was indeed a lie. This was their intention from the start. We saw it as we watched them argue. "Look, just leave your wallet and get out. By the way, you do know what will happen if you tell anyone about this, right? Scott's higher up than Larry, after all," Olivia said. At that, I couldn't help but smile. If they're playing it that way, there's no need to hold back anymore. "All right, but are you guys sure about this? You're going to regret it," I said. They might have thought I was bluffing because the three burst into laughter. "Like we care," they said. I took out my wallet and placed it on the table. Seeing that, the three sneered at me. "We'll give Larry his wallet back later." "Thanks for the treat, then," Olivia said. Larry looked furious and clenched his fists, but I calmed him down and we left the room, ignoring the three. We quickly took action. They were the ones who were going to regret this. Yeah, can't let people who pull stunts like this go unpunished, I thought. Later, a call came in on my phone. Recognizing the number, I answered with a smile. "Ah, Laura, looks like we're almost done here," I said. I handed the phone to Larry. After a quick talk, he hung up. "Well, shall we go? Seems like things have heated up," Larry said, looking very upset. We went back to the restaurant Olivia had chosen. Once there, we asked a waiter to call the owner. Soon after, the landlady, who was also Larry's mom, hurried out. "Thank you for your help. I'm sorry for the trouble," I said. "It's fine. People like them need to be taught a lesson," she replied, looking as angry as Larry had been earlier. We were led to a room. As we opened the door slightly, a tense atmosphere was evident. Inside were Olivia, Scott, and some senior officials from Larry's company, including his father-in-law. Why had it come to this? The restaurant Olivia chose happened to be run by Larry's mom. We realized it as soon as Olivia told us to meet there. It was a coincidence, but since we were going there anyway, Larry decided to call his mom. It was revealed that Olivia had only booked for 3. We knew she hadn't made a reservation for 4, but played along anyway. Once we understood Olivia's intentions, we immediately reported it to Larry's mom. Being straightforward people, both Larry's mom and Larry reported it to his dad, which led to the current situation. "Scott, what's going on here?" a man asked Scott. "Well, Scott was flustered, understandably so. That man was Mr. Bryan from the planning department's top management. Next to him was someone from the sales department's upper echelon. I think my father-in-law might have called them over. He was the former CEO, so it's understandable how he'd react if he found out his family was being treated this way, especially in his wife's restaurant by employees from his time in charge. Actually, my father-in-law used to be the CEO of the company where Larry works. He's now retired and not involved in its management, but he was highly respected during his tenure. Even now, he's still in touch with company folks." After hearing the story from my mother-in-law, he immediately reached out to the company to explain the situation. When the CDO hears that one of his employees is trying to exploit another employee by using their position, he's going to take action. The 3 who didn't know this were surprised by the sudden appearance of the company executives at the restaurant. They seemed unable to grasp the situation. Larry said he wanted me to accept this invitation because my husband often works with Larry, even now. I was shocked by the clear lies coming out of their mouths. They showed no regret, and I wondered if they didn't realize that such obvious lies would eventually be exposed. Just then, to interrupt Scott, Larry entered the room. To the surprise of Olivia and Scott, Larry politely said, "Excuse me." Scott glared at Larry as soon as he saw him. We understood the situation completely, but for Olivia and Scott, it must have been confusing. Before Scott could respond, my father-in-law spoke up. "I'm the former CEO, Andrew. I'm retired now and have handed over the company to Mr. Bryan here," he explained. "By the way, Larry is my son, but he didn't get his job at the company through any connections of mine. In fact, I wasn't involved in his hiring at all. And I should mention that this restaurant is run by my wife." Hearing my father-in-law's explanation, Olivia and Scott seemed to finally understand the situation, and their faces turned white instantly. Olivia let out a sigh, almost without words, and Scott was shaking uncontrollably. Olivia, looking incredulous, seemed more flustered than I'd ever seen her. "Let's cut the small talk and discuss the matter at hand," said my father-in-law. The discussion, or rather the one-sided questioning they faced, started in a tense atmosphere, and Olivia and Scott struggled to speak. Olivia's issues with me apparently related to some design work at the company. It turned out that Olivia had also been considered for the same project. Initially, when the project was discussed at the company, my design was chosen after searching among friends and family for talented designers. This choice boosted Larry's reputation. Moreover, despite being relatively Bryan, Larry had developed his own sales techniques, earning trust from his juniors and contributing to the company's performance. It frustrated me that he was taking credit for achievements that he accomplished with the help of his wife's talents. I truly believe Larry has been working hard, but didn't you feel the same when you got advice from him? This left Scott speechless, and a senior planning department executive made a sharp comment that added to his silence. Scott felt overlooked because whenever the sales department finished their tasks, they would give detailed advice to the planning team. This bothered Scott, making him feel like his products were overshadowed by Larry's. As Larry's answers continued to receive praise, Scott became resentful and often complained to Olivia. One day, Olivia overheard me talking about my work with some other moms. I love designing and often draw illustrations for school events like PTA meetings. Some of the moms knew I worked freelance, so when Olivia learned that I was the designer chosen for the company project, she started picking on me. Hearing this, we were speechless. We were honestly shocked that they would concoct such a scheme out of jealousy. Moreover, we learned another disturbing fact. "I'm really disappointed in you. Please wait, I'm truly sorry about this," Scott pleaded, but Mr. Bryan coldly responded, "I've heard from one of our planning department guys. I hope it's not true, but there's a significant amount of money being spent on planning. Is it really all going towards actual products?" At this, Scott froze and Olivia turned pale. It turned out Scott had been embezzling funds under the guise of planning expenses. This revelation took even us by surprise. It seemed Olivia was also involved in the scheme. "How did you get caught? You said it would be a secret," Olivia asked. "I don't know," Scott responded, frustrated by Olivia's question. His expression was that of someone who had inadvertently admitted to embezzlement, but it was too late. Mr. Bryan sighed and bowed his head to his father-in-law. "I'm really sorry. I never expected something like this to happen in the company that Mr. Andrew trusted me to run. It's my fault for not supervising better." "No, it's not your fault, Mr. Bryan, or the fault of the senior sales and marketing staff," someone said. "It's this couple who only know how to play dirty tricks. You both are going to pay for this." "Hold on, she's the one to blame," one accused. "Excuse me? Weren't you the one who said we could embezzle money?" the other retorted. "Hey, we're in a store. Keep it down," someone intervened. "Shut up. If you hadn't interfered. How dare you act all high and mighty when you're the one at fault? Well, if the husband is like this, so is the wife." In the end, Mr. Bryan had the arguing couple handed over to the police. It was only right since they had embezzled money. It caused quite a scene and was a hassle for the store, but Larry's mom handled it gracefully, and the situation was quickly controlled. Larry told me that Scott got fired from the company and was sued for damages. They were very strict with him, probably because it involved the company's products. Kevin stayed with Olivia's parents for a while. After the incident, Olivia's parents came over to apologize. From what I heard, the couple is now living quietly, maybe as a way to make up for what they did. Seeing how sincere Olivia's parents seemed, I couldn't help but wonder how their daughter and son-in-law ended up this way. I was worried about Kevin, but the company made sure the incident stayed quiet. So thankfully, no rumors spread at school and Kevin was fine. It's unfortunate what happened to him. I talked to Frank the other day, and Kevin seems to be doing well at school. He's a good kid and everyone trusts him. Rather than being sad about his parents, he seems more upset with them. That's good to hear. I haven't seen Olivia and Scott since that incident. Kevin, however, still hangs out with Frank and even comes over to our place from time to time. Watching the three of them play so happily, I hope they never end up like their parents. By a stroke of luck, we were safe this time, but I truly believe that our daily actions attract the people and opportunities in our lives. I want to cherish my relationships with others more than ever. My name is Margaret, and I am a 41-year-old janitor. I've been working for a housekeeping company that cleans corporate offices since I was 22, and I am a single woman about to celebrate 21 years of service. I took this job because I needed to look after my mom, who was very sick. We were a small family, just my mom, my brother, and me, and my mom was raising us on her own. When she got seriously ill, I had to leave vocational school and make time to take her to doctor appointments and help her out. I chose this job because it gave me the flexibility to take care of my mom. Now, I'm really happy I ended up here. My boss and coworkers are supportive and always treat me kindly, calling me Margaret, sweetie. I also have a few people working under me, and they are wonderful too. I used to think there couldn't be a better place to work. My mother died when I was 23, and my brother was 18, right as fall turned to winter. Losing her hit me hard, and I started taking more time off work. It was just as our company was getting ready for the busiest time of year with our year-end deep cleaning. Despite the bad timing, my colleagues told me, "It's okay, we'll wait for you to feel better." I was grateful for their kindness, but all I wanted was to be alone. I felt like following my mom. But I had a younger brother who needed me. He had lost his mom before even becoming an adult, and out of care for him, I forced myself to keep going. At that time, he was still in college. I looked after my brother, paid for his school textbooks as he moved through the grades, and drove him home when his classes ended late. When he got a job, I bought him a suit as a celebration gift. Even though I didn't earn much, I worked hard and thought of myself as standing in for our mom. After our mom died, my brother started asking me, "Why don't you quit being a janitor? And why don't you get a better job?" I think he was embarrassed by my low income and our modest social status. At that time, I wasn't mentally ready to change jobs, so hearing this from him was really tough. My coworkers were the ones who supported me kindly during this time. Later, my brother worked hard, got a job at a big corporation, a well-known company you often see in TV ads and online. His starting salary was almost double mine. He was as happy as a kid getting lots of money for New Year's. "Look at this, sis, I've surpassed you in just 2 months. Check out this payslip, isn't it amazing?" He'd say, full of joy and bragging to others. "Sis, quit your janitor job and get a good one like mine," he'd tell me. "Hey, watch how you talk." "I love my current job," I'd reply. "Quit making excuses. Our salaries are no match," he'd argue. I wish he had chosen his words more carefully. Although I was glad his efforts had paid off, sitting in front of our mother's portrait, I reported, "My brother, your son, is all grown up now." But my younger brother, proud of his job and his company, was heading down a troubling path. He was good at his work and always talked about the praise he got from his boss. Despite being new to the company, he was chosen for a big project. As his sister, I was proud of him. However, I noticed him making condescending comments about his colleagues, and this only got worse over time. I was doing well at getting noticed, but my brother complained about his coworkers. He thought they were slow and feared they might hurt his reputation. He said this openly, as if he looked down on everyone, not just those at his job. I knew this attitude could really harm him eventually. I tried to warn him. "I think all the new hires are at the same level, you know. You're all just starting," I told him. But my brother snapped back, "Wow, sis, you're pretty talkative for a janitor with a low-level education," and he sneered at me. Frustrated, I answered, "Well, I've been working longer than you, so I know there isn't that much difference in people's abilities." He retorted, "Really? Do you have any college graduates at your cleaning company before you lecture me? Why don't you tell them they've wasted their lives?" After belittling me, he went out for drinks. I thought the real world would teach him a lesson soon. Despite my concerns, his arrogance only grew worse. It started with him feeling superior because his salary was higher than mine. And then he began to see himself as more gifted than others, which changed how he acted. He didn't hold back his critical comments about me. At first, I thought he was just excited about his job, so I let it slide. But when gentle warnings didn't work, I seriously scolded him, yet nothing changed. I started to doubt myself as a sister, wondering if I hadn't handled things well with him. Years passed, and I kept working as a janitor. My brother did well and climbed the corporate ladder, but his dismissive attitude toward others only got worse. Then he moved in with his girlfriend, and they got married. His wife also seemed very arrogant, which stressed me out. She was much younger than him, and it felt like she was from a different generation. The first time I met her, when my brother introduced us, she asked, "So you really are a janitor?" I replied, "Yes, I find it a fulfilling and enjoyable job." She said, "Really? Isn't it dirty?" I couldn't believe it when she said, "It must smell bad." My brother joined in and said, "Right, it's unimaginable, isn't it? It's unsanitary, and she's not attractive. She doesn't have any money either, but what can I do? I'm related to her. Sorry about that." I was shocked to hear this and don't remember much of what happened afterwards. After she left, I yelled at my brother, "You were out of line. What do you mean? I am related to her, so it can't be helped? And what's up with her too? Don't you dare judge people by their jobs or income." My brother, surprised by my sudden outburst, stammered but managed to snap back. "Shut up. You're a vocational school dropout, and I'm a college graduate, so is she. We can't help but look down on you. You earn less and have a low-level job, so you're the one leading a loser life." With that, he stormed out of the house. I cried out of sadness and frustration. I had dropped out of vocational school because of our mother's illness, and my brother knew that. His words hurt me deeply. Yes, my income is modest, but I had still managed to pay for his education. I did my best to take over our late mother's role. I must have made a mistake in how I dealt with him. While crying, I looked at myself in the mirror. It bothered me that he called me ugly. I have a face similar to my brother's. I'm neither beautiful nor cute, but I don't think I'm ugly. Maybe I could take better care of myself. I wondered, if I paid more attention to my looks and changed myself, would he see me differently? But even if I dressed up, it's unlikely my brother's personality would change. Marrying a woman with similar attitudes probably only made his narcissism worse. While talking to my coworkers about this, I started to think that my relationship with my brother might be beyond repair. One day, I received a postcard from my brother and his wife saying they had moved. From the address, it looked like a standalone house. What's this all about? They're so reserved. If they had told me, I would have thrown a celebration and even helped them move. I had something I wanted to discuss with them too, so I decided to call them after a long time. "Hello, I got your postcard." I could hear my brother's cheerful voice on the phone. "It's amazing, right? A single-family house at this young age because I'm a fast tracker. It would be impossible if it weren't me, right?" "Yeah, amazing indeed," I replied. He was bragging as usual, but I found it nostalgic and let him talk as much as he wanted. Then I brought up my matter. "I have something to talk to you about too. Just the other day, my company got contracted to clean your office building. We might bump into each other occasionally." "Good for you. You wouldn't get to step foot in such a big building otherwise, right?" He could have just ended there, but he added, "There's one more thing. I got a boyfriend." "What? Seriously?" My brother sounded genuinely surprised. "Yes, he's older and a wonderful man. After what you said, I started taking better care of my skin and such." "He fell for me at first sight," I said jokingly. "Well then, that's thanks to me, huh?" Somehow, he managed to take credit for this as well. "Well, I wouldn't say you haven't played a part in it. I wanted to introduce my boyfriend to you. He's been eager to meet you too, so would it be okay if we visited your place soon? We could also bring a housewarming gift," I mentioned casually. "Ed, you're coming over." His previously cheerful tone suddenly darkened. I wondered what was going on. "You do understand what your job is, don't you?" "Huh? Job? You mean my cleaning job?" "Listen, I've got a new house, which means it's clean, right? I don't want a filthy person like a janitor coming in my house." "Excuse me? Was he saying that because janitors are considered dirty, he doesn't want one in his brand new house?" I was confused and my mind went blank. "Considering the dirty work you do, shouldn't you know how to refrain from visiting people's places? I'm sure your coworkers feel the same." "You're out of line. That's rude." "Apologize," I said, my blood starting to boil in anger. I could feel my fury ready to explode. Was it common courtesy to stay away because my job is dirty? Rude. Apologize. What the hell? I couldn't contain myself and yelled out loud. "You've got some nerve to disrespect people like that. This is unacceptable." I could have handled it if it were just about me, but he was mocking my colleagues too. I couldn't let this slide. I could tell my harsh words shocked my brother over the phone. He's usually quick to criticize others, but when someone fights back, he stumbles over his words. "Do you really think a person's worth is based on their job? That's just silly. Apologize to me right now." "What? Why are you freaking out all of a sudden?" he replied. "I've had enough of you. How did you become so mean? Mom would be heartbroken. The real mean person is you. Your boyfriend must be worthless if he can't get a better job. If he had any sense, he wouldn't even talk to a cleaning lady. If you weren't my sister, I would never deal with someone dirty like you. If you weren't my brother, I would have left you behind a long time ago," I shot back. I was about to say that I'm cutting ties with you. Never contact me again. "Oh, okay. Got it. Goodbye then?" We both said things to hurt each other. It was a petty argument, and neither of us was in the mood for a mature conversation. He tried to say something more, but I hung up on him. I was ready to cut ties with my brother. He's the only sibling I have, but I couldn't stand him anymore because he thinks that as a janitor, I don't deserve basic respect. Even though we're siblings, if our values are this different, it's better for us to stay apart from now on. I'll be fine. My brother is already an adult. This is our goodbye. I had come to terms with my feelings. Several months passed since I decided to sever ties with my brother. By some twist of fate, I was assigned to clean the office building where he worked. I think my boss was trying to be thoughtful, but I really didn't want to be there. However, my principle is to do my best at any job I'm given. Suppressing my feelings, I headed to my brother's company. The building was huge and spacious. With such a large space, I should be able to avoid running into my brother. Even if we did meet, he probably wouldn't recognize me. Feeling slightly relieved at that thought, I focused on cleaning, pushing my cart filled with cleaning supplies. It was that afternoon while I was mopping the floor. I noticed a group of about 5 men standing by the vending machine, sipping canned coffee and talking. One of them was saying, "I really am sorry for the inconvenience caused. Enough is enough. How many years have you been with us? Consult and report before things get to a point where the whole team has to clean up your mess," another man scolded. "Yes, sir. It's happened 3 times just this quarter." "I'm sorry, sir." It seemed like the guy who was apologizing had made some mistakes, and they all had to work together to fix them. "Good job, guys," I thought to myself as I continued mopping, making sure not to look in their direction. While your peers have already become team leaders, some even managers, you need to step up your game. Another scolding came. "I'm sorry," the man replied. Those are some harsh words. I wish they'd let him off the hook soon, I thought. I wanted to mop from there all the way down the hallway on the other side, but they were in the way. After scolding the man once again, they all returned to the office. As the group passed by me, I noticed a familiar face, my brother. The one who had messed up and was being scolded was my brother. I couldn't believe it. My brother also saw me, froze for a minute, then went completely pale. But without saying a word to me, he quickly followed his team and left. During the rest of my shift, my mind kept drifting back to my brother. He was supposed to be the fastest rising among his colleagues. But the brother I saw earlier looked nothing but a burden to the company, a straggler. He seemed like an employee who constantly made mistakes at work and was always apologizing. This intuition came from watching various human interactions in the corporate structure over the years as a janitor. His claim of being a competent individual was just his vanity. He must have been doing well at the beginning, at least. As I suspected, he might have become complacent and been overtaken by his colleagues, tripped up when he least expected it. I think it's bound to happen because of his personality. He looks down on others so easily, but I don't need to worry about him anymore. My brother and I are strangers now. We've cut ties. A few days after realizing the truth, I saw my brother again. I was cleaning the main lobby when he came down the elevator with someone. "Darn, I left the bag with the samples upstairs," he said. I'll go get it. You can wait here, sir." "No need. I'll go. You're useless anyway. But when you get promoted, you take care of me, okay?" "Not again, sir. I told you I'll go get it." The man, who seemed to be his junior, went back on the elevator to retrieve the forgotten item. It was ironic seeing how he treated me in the past, claiming to be competent. From a distance, I watched my brother shrink into a corner of the lobby, feeling pity for him as I cleaned the leaves of the lobby's decorative plants. My senior colleague, who was cleaning with me, quietly came over. "Hey, isn't that your brother?" "Uh-huh. Yes, it seems like he messed up. Let's just leave him be, okay?" My colleague, looking worriedly at my brother, went back to her cleaning duties. Bothered by our sympathetic looks, my brother sprang up and marched over to me. "Hey, janitor, what are you doing?" "I'm cleaning." "No, I mean, why are you here?" "I'm working." At my reply, my brother got visibly angry and raised his voice. "Don't you dare tell my wife that I look pathetic at work. You got that?" His frustrations seemed to be vented on me. The gazes of those around us focused on my loudly ranting brother. Out of concern for the onlookers, I whispered, "You're trying." "Shut up. Don't you, a lowly educated person, order me around. People are watching." "People are watching? Oh dear brother, please, can you please be quiet?" As I tried to calm him down by holding his hand, he recoiled. You're filthy. Don't touch me." He aggressively wiped the area I had touched and continued his insults. "You're threatening me, aren't you? You want money, right? How much do you want me to cough up?" "Threaten for money? What are you talking about?" I asked, dumbfounded. "I told you not to tell my wife." "Get it, you idiot," my brother snapped. Oh, that's what this is about, I realized. Constant mistakes at work or falling behind in your career? Which one do you not want me to mention? Both, obviously, he replied, clearly scared I might reveal everything to his wife. Wait, you're even lying to your own wife? I asked. Shut up, no garbage like you should speak, he retorted. Garbage? What on earth? He didn't care who was watching, he just kept insulting me. The stress from his job must be overwhelming, and he probably felt better by putting me down. I'm not some punching bag for you to take your frustrations out on, I told him. Just then, a voice from behind intervened. That's rude to the cleaning staff. Shut up, who are you? My brother blurted out, finally noticing the tension around him. Unable to tolerate my brother's rudeness any longer, a well-dressed, gray-haired elderly man stepped forward. His high social status was evident. The man stood beside me and gently placed a hand on my back. Dirty idiot, such intolerable slurs. Apologize to her right now. Huh, but she's my sister. We're just having a family squabble, my brother stammered, trying to downplay it. I thought you said you cut ties with me, I interjected. Shut up, he snapped back, showing his dual nature humble towards the man, but aggressive towards me. The gray-haired man then added, if it's a family issue, it concerns me as well. Huh? Pleased to meet you. I'm the gentleman dating your sister, he revealed. My brother was shocked. I'm the executive vice president of the subsidiary that your company is seconding. I'm also a board member of your company. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to introduce ourselves the other day. What? My brother was panicking, completely out of his depth. Feeling a bit awkward, I gave my boyfriend a side glance. You didn't really have to step in just now, I muttered. If not now, then when? He replied with a warm smile, mimicking a popular TV personality. Hey sis, is that really true? My little brother asked, terrified. Indeed. When we were contracted for cleaning this building, I accompanied our CEO. He, who was in charge of the contract, was interested in me, I explained. No, that's a lie. It's the truth. During the contract signing, I instantly fell for her who was explaining the details on behalf of a CEO who couldn't do it well, and I asked her out, my boyfriend said. A wave of gasps and murmurs echoed through the lobby. How embarrassing. I heard you said that no decent man would date a cleaning lady, and that he probably doesn't even have a stable job. I didn't say that, my brother responded. But whether he said it or not, he needed to apologize for the insults he threw at me. My brother had no choice but to listen to the stern words from the man, turning pale. You're Margaret's brother, aren't you? You shouldn't worry your sister too much. By then, my senior cleaner had joined us, and colleagues from other floors were gathering too. My brother was completely cornered. Looking defeated, he could barely stand as he bowed his head towards me. I'm sorry, he muttered, his voice weak and filled with despair, lacking any energy or emotion. Later, my brother was transferred to a remote branch of a subsidiary company. Let me make it clear, my boyfriend had nothing to do with my brother's transfer. My brother panicked when his coworkers heard his repeated insults towards me and feared his wife finding out about his problems at work. This led him to make several mistakes. It seems like he's no longer on the fast track to promotion. His wife came to me crying when she learned about his transfer. You're dating an executive from my husband's company, aren't you? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Please bring my husband back to the head office, she begged. Of course, I said no. Her plea fell on deaf ears. Unable to afford their mortgage with his reduced salary after the transfer, it looks like they'll have to sell their newly built home. I have no interest in what happens to my brother and his wife after this. And me? I got married to my boyfriend, and we're living happily in our newly built home. I'm still working as a cleaner, but now less out in the field, because I've become the president of the cleaning company I've always worked for. The president retired, and I was nominated as the successor. I had a lot of doubts about being president, but I decided to give it my all for the company I love. No matter what anyone says, I plan to continue doing the job I love, for the company I love, with my head held high.